I want to welcome Denise Horan to the show today. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. This
Yes.
is like a treat for me.
Yes, well, that's
Come
wonderful.
and sit and have a conversation.
Yes, you're good at that,
Talk
right?
about myself.
You can't go wrong with that, right?
Right.
So the purpose of this show, as you know, is to kind of go behind the scenes of local CEOs, business owners, whatever you want to call yourself, the big cheese, about like your journey in getting here. And you specifically, I've been interested to hear about your journey because you are a lady of many things and you're involved in a lot of different things. I feel like this is where my life is going if I continue, right? Like I'm going to be the Denise Horan eventually and have my hands in all these different pots.
That's very kind.
So tell us about like, how did you get into the entrepreneurial journey? Is it something that's always been there or did something happen?
So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family.
Okay.
My father had the typical job with mobile way back when, and all of a sudden he called up my uncle and said, I don't want to do this anymore. And so the two of them gave up their big jobs and went to the Finger Lakes and bought a marina and a restaurant, ice cream shop and a gift shop.
Interesting.
We had 9 kids between the two families, so we all worked from the time we were, I think usually work started around 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
Washing boats.
What made him decide to do that, like to buy that stuff, like of all the things?
You know, he got a good deal. It was right after a flood. We all cleaned up the property. It's beautiful.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was great. So anyway, I got a taste of it. So of course, because my parents did that, I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So went to college as a pre-med major.
Oh.
And the last year when I was working in this rat colony and the rats were overdosed, I said, you know what? I can't do this. They were hanging from the ceiling.
So you were like, I'm assuming testing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blood pressure testing on rats. And I was also working at the hospital. And I'm like, you know what? This really doesn't fit me. So I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I came to Albany and went for my MBA. And when I was about a year into my MBA, they said, you need some work experience. Because back then, they didn't want you to go directly through. Mm-hmm. They wanted, So anyway, I quit school for 1 semester and switched over to part-time and got a job. And when I went to ask for a job, you'll love this. They're like reading off the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, that's not going to do it for me. I need something flexible. I need something lively. So finally they're like, all right, we have 1 more. You're not going to like it. And I was like, okay. And they're like, it is straight commission. Your boss is in New York City. We're giving you a tiny studio in downtown Albany. All you have is a phone, a desk, and a chair. And you're to call everybody in the capital region.
Oh, my God.
I said, that's perfect. So needless to say, that was my sales beginning.
Yeah.
And then I graduated with an MBA, and my entire family's like, so what are you going to do now? I'm like, I love this job. I'm going to stay for a little while. Ended up getting promoted all the way up to VP of sales, had record-breaking years. Entrepreneurial company, $5 million, I think, when I got in, 12 years after, $30 million.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I learned a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left, I was going to look for another job, and people started, I started networking. We're good at that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Yes. And people started asking me, you want to do a project while you're looking? And I kept doing projects, and I got really busy. And then I got pregnant. So I was like, I need flexibility. I think I'll set up a consulting company for a little while.
Yeah, because you were doing that.
This is my 25th year on my own.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about that. It hasn't been easy.
Of course not.
But, my husband traveled. I needed flexibility. I loved having the flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's my word of advice to a lot of people. Don't expect to make a fortune necessarily if it's a lifestyle business. And you have to decide what kind of business do you want.
Yeah.
because a lot of times I think I probably could have made a lot more out in the workforce. But you know what? I love what I do.
Yeah.
I basically work with salespeople, entrepreneurs, and professional services people. And all coaching for revenue growth, new clients, all very salesy oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
And I'm sure it's changed a lot. Well, to a degree in the last,
COVID
25
changed
years.
it drastically.
COVID, I'm sure, changed it. Yep.
Yes.
Definitely.
Tons.
So I find it interesting that, the journey that you were on stemmed from you saying no to something.
Yeah.
And I think that's a trait that entrepreneurs can be good at, right? They can be good at saying no because typically they want to go into like the path untaken, right? Or, not taken, whatever that word is.
Right.
So I find that very interesting. So how did you feel about that at the time? Like, were you scared in the fact that like you were in like med school and you're like, no,
Pre-med, yeah.
this isn't gonna be for me.
Oh, I know.
And then having to like rethink about like the direction that you were going.
My whole life I had to change.
Yeah.
And nothing like going to talk to your father after he sent you to expensive private school and saying,
you're like, nah.
Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. So he was like, oh gosh, now what? I said, I don't know, figure it out. And then I was like, you know what? I like business. I had to say to my dad, I actually like what you do.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. And, so it ended up working out nicely. I'm glad I worked for someone else first.
Right.
You learn a ton. And I was so lucky because I was actually selling to all industries.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I have a really broad understanding of a lot of industries and a lot of businesses. So when somebody says to me, can you be my coach? Now I do a lot of private coaching.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I usually know a little bit about their industry. I can do some research. Obviously, there's tons of information.
I mean, I when you're talking about sales, though, I feel like regardless of the industry, there's a few foundational pieces, right? Like
the fundamentals are, yep.
It's across
totally
the board.
Right.
So, like, that, I feel like makes it pretty easy. Because if you're doing, like, something else, that may not apply across all industries.
And my favorite clients, believe it or not, are lawyers. And because lawyers, they never take a sales or marketing class. Right.
Well, they don't think they need to sell.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, you do.
Well, they get out of law school, and then, the managing partner says to them, go get me some clients. And they're like,
go
why?
Network. Yeah. How do you do that?
So I have a great time teaching, personal marketing and branding to lawyers and, how to get new clients and how to be visible in their community.
Right.
Surprisingly, they don't
know how to do that.
I'm not surprised. They don't always get it.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that's not taught anywhere. Like in general, you go into sales. I remember in college, so I had my first degree was graphic communications, marketing, and sales. So I had some sales courses because I had taken college and high school. And I remember that the professor was like in sales. And I'm pretty sure he sold like mattresses or something like that. So like we're talking like car business, which I did go in the car business for a while. And I remember the class was about specifically overcoming an objection. And how we were role playing was like, oh, you just say this. And then magically the person would like say yes. And I remember being in the class and having, not much sales experience outside of like working in a restaurant. And being like, this can't be this easy. No. That you just say, you overcome this objection and it's fine. And it always makes me chuckle because like how sales is taught is not based on reality. No. It's like all hypothetical. Well, if you go down this route, okay, it'll be fine. Like objections are real, but you have to understand the reactions you're going to get. And you won't know that unless either you're coached on it, you practice and fall on your face a million times, or you're actually aware of those things prior to getting into those conversations, which we know that that's not really happening.
And I think you know that the relationship building, that's not going away.
No.
And that is so, so important. And being able to read other people, like being able to read body language and being able to react differently, be a chameleon, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what makes people successful.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be a chameleon.
And it's okay to do that on the phone or on the screen. It's just a little bit harder.
Right. Well, because you can't see all those things, right? I think that was what affected people during pandemic is you're only seeing like torso up, right? So you can't see how people are fidgeting. You can't see where their legs are positioned.
Right.
I think we kind of acknowledge the distractions because the fact that we were distracted, like, if your phone, you can look at it and have your eyes off camera, but still seem like you're engaged, right? So it was completely different. But yeah, I can't imagine trying to sell, in that particular situation. So tell us so you're involved in like a lot of different things.
I am. I love it.
What are those things?
Okay. So let's start with charity because I'm wearing my Life is Great.
Okay.
Right? This is a Shiro pin.
Okay.
Shihiro.
Yep.
Shiro.
Got it.
So I've been on the board and active with the Women's Employment Resource Center for like 20 years. I mean, really long. And I love that organization. So my big event comes up. I started a cocktail party, networking, cocktails, and shopping. How can you beat it?
Yeah, you can't.
Right. So this is my 15th year, and it's the beginning of June. So we're gearing up, getting sponsors right now, and it's going to be a really great event. We do it at the Prine House in Latham. It's a beautiful old barn with gardens.
Okay. I was like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
That's awesome.
I do that. I run a local sales club called the Sales Performers Club.
Okay.
And we meet monthly, and we are a self-development club. So there's a topic every month. We're not really a leads group. There's
more like education, development.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it's a membership group. We have a great time, and I do invite guests to come in as well, either as speakers or just to see what it's like and see if they want to, join the
Be a part of it, yeah.
I run a women's leadership group called the Circle Leadership Group. There's 25 women. They're all executive level or business owners.
Okay.
They are a lot of fun. We meet on Zoom monthly, but we go on social outings or field trips 6 times a year, probably every other month.
Nice.
We just went to MOPCO and did improv for leaders.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I was waiting for someone to fall off the stage. It was just so funny. Do you know Kat Coppett?
No, I don't.
You have to interview her. I got to tell you, she's a riot.
Okay.
And we played games in her theater.
Yeah.
On the on the stage. And it was just really fun. But they're an amazing group of women. So anytime you want to talk to any of them, they're just fabulous. And I'm about ready to launch something big. And I'm crazy probably. I as a visionary, and you are too.
Yeah.
You're just like, I have this great idea.
Yeah, all the time.
And then you sit down, you're like, I didn't realize it was going to cost me so much time, money, work. So I am launching a national sales group. Club.
Okay.
It will be a resource platform, and it will be you can be a member or a guest. It will have tons of guest speakers, events. It's not a leads group. It's really resources for salespeople or anyone interested in sales.
Okay.
So the content that we're putting together right now is huge. Website's underway right now. Logo's beautiful. I'm really excited.
That's awesome. That is very exciting.
But it's taken me a little longer. I kind of wanted to launch it in January. I'm hoping to finish it this year.
Well, hopefully by the time your episode comes out, it'll be ready. It'll be all beautiful and done.
So I thought of this because I don't know about the rest of the world, but I spent almost 3 years on virtual networking all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it locally.
Yeah.
I did this on purpose so I could meet people everywhere. And I'm like, oh, this is fabulous. I have all these contacts now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just never know who people know, though.
Right.
Like, it's amazing how many people I've met outside of New York that are connected with people here in the capital region. And I've even gotten reintroduced to people who are out of state or even out of country because they're like, oh, you got to meet this, this local person. And I just find that hilarious.
Yes.
How connected people are.
It's a small world.
It is definitely a very small world. So you're
excited about those. Those are my
Yep.
main ones. I'm also involved in Links to Leadership.
Okay.
So Georgia Kelly from Merrill Lynch started this all-women's golf tournament, but it's not typical golf tournament. It has a clinic. And last year we had 40 women. I found an old friend from the LPGA,
Mm-hmm.
and I brought her in, and she teaches the clinic, and she's really the face of the tournament. And then we have a junior member now, a 12-year-old star.
Oh.
Yes, so we're really excited. That will be held in September. So right now we're really busy getting that one ready as well. And there's probably, 12 people on the committee and then another 40 volunteers. It's huge.
Probably need that.
It's a great tournament. And we raised money for the Women's Employment Resource Center last year.
That's great.
So it was a great thing. This year we're going to be giving it to them and Girls Inc.
Okay.
So it'll be great.
That's great. So you have your hands.
Yeah,
and that's not even it, because you're doing consulting too.
Well, I'm trying
for
to
individuals,
work
right?
My husband reminds me I need to make money.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, really? It can't be a nonprofit.
I can't
Literally.
just help the world. Yeah.
Literally, right. So no, I've been working hard.
That's awesome.
I love to work. People are like, oh my God, you're going to be 60 years old. Are you going to retire? I'm like, why?
Yeah, but you enjoy what you're doing. So
why?
It's not.
Why should I retire?
Yeah. So you're working with individuals and companies?
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot. So basically there's sales teams, entrepreneurs, professional services. Pretty much everyone needs to sell.
Yeah, everyone needs to have a personality when they are selling. Yeah, for sure.
So that's good. And I hope to write a second book.
Yes. You wanna? I mean, we can transition to the book for a quick second. So you wrote this one. When did this come out?
So I have a good story. Do you want it?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Okay. So it's 60 interviews of great salespeople.
Okay.
I found them all over the place. People that used to work for me, people I met at a train, airport, whatever. And so I, interviewed. It took me almost all of 2019. So I had to finish up writing. I finished it a week before COVID hit, but I knew the world was going to change. I'm like, I can't give this to the publisher. So I waited a few weeks. I said, I'm rewriting the end. Because we saw what happened.
Yeah.
I had salespeople calling me up going, how am I going to make my goals, right? And, how I can't reach people. Well, you saw the explosion.
Yeah.
LinkedIn went nuts because people didn't know how to find people.
Yeah.
Messenger became a whole new thing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Didn't it? Virtual. Zoom.
Zoom
What,
went
did
crazy.
anyone know what Zoom was?
Nope,
Sure
not
some
before
people
that.
did.
Not before that.
Right. There were so many changes. So I went in and I talked about technology just exploded because we had to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally handed it in after I finished writing the end. And then it was released during COVID. It wasn't like I could have book signings.
Right.
So I did a virtual book signing. I mean, I did promotions. I've been running a really fun campaign called Where's Denise's Book? Today it's at the Hangar.
Yes.
So, we got
I feel like I should have a shelf
right
for
under
people.
that so we can see. But I take the campaign down because somebody says to me, "Don't you think you've done enough?" on the campaign?
No.
I'm like, all right, well, I'm insulted. I take it off. People start calling me. Where's your book? I'm like, what do you mean? Where's the book? The campaign. I get on LinkedIn every week to see where the book is, or Instagram.
Yeah, and you missed a week. Oh my God, that's too funny.
I wasn't the one taking all the pictures.
Yeah.
I was having people, if they were traveling,
Yeah.
submit them. The book went to Utah and Greece.
Oh, that's amazing.
And all these Colorado, all these cool places.
That's so awesome. I
Yeah.
feel like that reminds me of like some people travel with like a troll, and they'll take
Right.
pictures in different places.
Exactly. Well, I got it from my daughter doing the Flat Stanley.
Okay.
And Flat Stanley
Yep.
was this like paper thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Flat Stanley, we took Flat Stanley everywhere.
Right.
Oh, it was so funny. So I said, I'm going to do one of those.
I think it's a good idea. You should continue. I think you should continue.
Well, it depends on who you ask, but I suppose I could put up a poll and find out.
You could do a poll, or you could just do it. If people say otherwise, just be like, it's not your book, it's not your promotion, bye.
Right.
So what would be the second book?
It's very hard to sell a book.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I mean,
'cause
no
everyone
matter how
everyone
it's
has one.
published, whether it's self-published or I did a hybrid publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a little bit of the work for me, but, the marketing still is really up to the author.
Yeah, definitely.
And you really do need to work hard at it. But, I was reading a consultant book, and they're like, you want to raise your level.
Yeah.
You need to
Well,
have
I think it almost establishes this extra level of resource and validity when you write a book, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying, like, you have this one and you wanted to write a second one.
Well, it would be stories from the garage.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
entrepreneurs.
Okay, very cool.
So I'll be calling you. For
Okay.
an interview.
For my garage?
So I gotta launch first. I gotta launch the platform. I can't start this halfway through and then
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to get this one underway, and then next year that will be my.
That'll be a fun project.
And then I have a third, stories from the bench. The
Stories
lawyers.
from the bench. Oh yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very cool. You could kind of go with a lot of different concepts with that.
Oh, I know.
Like forever, and
Be
have a
fun.
series. Yeah, that would be fun. So you have all these things. You have a second book that you want to do, third book, right? Is there anything else that you've thought about, like, I hate to say, like, adding to your plate, but that you've aspired to, like, be a part of, a business you want to buy, or a business you want to be a part of, or maybe there's another just organization that you've been like, hey, I want to eventually loop this into what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny that you asked that because, I mean, I, at heart, am a serial entrepreneur.
Right.
If it were up to
Clearly
me,
obvious, I think.
but if it were up to me, I would have bought other businesses.
Yeah.
But I decided I wanted to remain married. And I, unfortunately, or fortunately, oh, how bad is that, married a banker who's the total opposite of me.
Yeah.
So,
Very calculated.
to the point where you sit down for dinner and say, well, what did you do today? And, well, I'm working on this beat. I'm all excited. He's like, how much does that cost? And I'm like, oh boy, no. You are not going to be the people that I go to for business ideas or inspiration or motivation. So, there are other things, and I look at everything. But I love really kind of doing the coaching. Mm-hmm. Small groups, one-on-one. Yeah. I think I'm going to add a coaching arm to my new business on a national level, like kind of a mastermind type group.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is you have very specific people
I've just
that
remain local because it was easier.
Right.
And I think I'd rather do a little more outside. Maybe. I used to travel all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's not, that's not a problem. And then eventually I would like to travel a little bit more. I've been fortunate enough to be a lot of places. Mm-hmm. I'd like to do more. Travel's great.
Travel is great.
It's hard to plan it around all this.
Right.
So I'm kind of decided I'm going to work my tail off for at least a few more years, and then I'll figure it out.
And then scale back maybe, or change where
I
your
won't
priorities.
scale back. I'll just do something else.
Okay.
Right?
I mean,
hey, you can buy my sales platform.
Yes.
There you go.
And
It'd be perfect for you.
So I'm curious to hear about like some more of like the feelings that you experience because you're doing all these things, right? And you've gotten to the point where you've practiced the uncomfortable aspect of things. Like you've dealt with the unknown as a business owner. But for somebody new coming into this, what advice would you give them specifically about the unknown factor?
So there are a lot of unknowns, and I'll start with...
As your husband would probably tell you.
Yeah. I think if you dwell on it, you do nothing.
Paralysis, yeah.
Right? You do, because then you're like, and you get scared. But, I get nervous. Where's my next client? We all hunt what we eat, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm out there selling just like everyone else, trying to get new clients.
Right.
And I'm worried, is this going to be a good year, things like that.
Right.
So I think that's the big thing. I also worry, and this, maybe I shouldn't say this, but, I am responsible for 25 awesome women. I don't want them to come to leadership group saying, oh my God, I'm so bored. Or I don't want to rejoin, because I don't like what the plan was. Even though they contribute ideas to what they want to do, I need to constantly be up giving them something exciting. And so I'm constantly talking to like potential guest speakers and looking at topics and studying stuff. And the same with the sales club. They don't want to just talk about cold calling. That's boring.
Right.
So, like, for instance, and you probably appreciate this, I met a podcast consultant out of New York City on one of my virtual networkings. She actually is a podcaster, but she's also helped set up other people's studios. So she's coming to speak, and it's open to the public. I opened it for guests because it's going to be on Zoom anyway. And then in May, we'll be pretty much discussing artificial intelligence and sales and chat GPT.
Oh, nice.
So I've been playing like crazy trying to get to know, it does a lot of stuff.
It does a lot of stuff, but it depends on how you put things in there.
Right. It doesn't know who I am.
No.
I don't think it's good with people.
I think it's based on the instruction. So it's literal instruction. So if you say, like, I need you to rephrase this sentence, and then you clip in the sentence,
it's good.
It's going to do exactly what you say, right? But if you need more options, you have to be explicit. And it's very interesting. It's kind of like the exercise of, like, telling someone, how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And you don't realize, like, okay, we'll put the peanut butter on the piece of bread, but like how exactly is that? You can't just say that. Right. You have to say dip the knife into the peanut butter, scoop the peanut butter out, place the peanut butter on the piece of bread, smear it back and forth. Like it's a crazy how literal you have like and like this applies in a lot of different ways when I talk about like networking coaching sometimes. I've had people, they're like, oh, well, I have this elevator pitch, and I'm like, nobody cares about your elevator pitch because
it's about you.
You haven't, like, you're selling your company and products and services, and, like, no one knows who you are.
Right.
I'm like, that is the wrong time. You're also probably speaking doctor at that time. And when you do that, people are like, oh, I didn't, that was totally like, You get the blank stare, deer in headlights nod, which is not a good reply when somebody says something like that. But yeah, that's super awesome.
But that's funny that you brought that up though, because we have to know what the capabilities of all this technology
and how it plays a role.
Intelligence.
Right.
And if you want, like I was doing a speaking engagement, and I knew my topic, wrote the PowerPoint out, waited until it was all done. Then I went on chat and asked them the question of what I was going to be talking about to kind of double check to see if they thought of something I didn't think of.
Right.
Basically, it was a lot of the same stuff. As it should have been.
Yeah.
So it just, I realized, though, after it spit out an entire report for me, maybe I didn't have to work so hard.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the things that we're doing, especially as business owners, is usually we're not doing something that's completely new and unheard of, right? Like the things we're doing already exist. There's no point in reinventing the wheel, but you are modifying the wheel, right?
Yes.
Like the size, the shape, everything is slightly different. It's based on your skills, your life experience, and how you think whatever this thing is should be presented to the world, right? And I think there is definitely some validity to some unbiased opinions.
Yes.
To help develop whatever those things are, whether it like, you know, you building your national group, I think is very interesting because I think it's going to benefit your local group immensely.
I would think so. I'm actually taking them into the group free of charge because they already pay a membership to me.
Right.
To get on there and experience it and give me feedback. They'll be a great asset.
Yeah.
Both ways.
And I think it'll be helpful for them to see like some of these things they're experiencing exist everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in London or Florida. It's the same. It's the same across the board. You got to do these things.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. You're totally right though. I mean, you get the facts and then you put your personality into anything.
Right.
So AI is not going to put personality into anything.
No, it's
gonna
purely
need to be
resource facts, and there's no spin, right? Like you can't, you can't.
They're
build
not going to come
personality
out with a personality.
No.
I mean, we've already noticed that Alexa can't really
No.
come out with a personality. She tries.
Yes.
She scares me sometimes.
She'll give you some sass back sometimes.
I know. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely will be. And it'll be good to have, I like to kind of have my guests come back after a year just to kind of see, like, how are those projects going? What have you learned since, we talked last?
I'm sure I'll have a list for you.
I'm sure you'll have a complete list for sure. But before we transition out, I always like to ask my guests about one cool fact about yourself. So you can't use the book now because you already talked about it.
Right.
So one cool fact.
So I love to cook.
You love to cook? Like what?
So everything.
Everything? Okay.
Pretty much. Well, I shouldn't say everything. That's not true. But that's my stress relief.
Okay.
So I literally leave my desk, which is my home office. And I leave early, like around 5, but I also go to work in my office, like 7. But walk out of there feeling great. The way it is, I pour something, I create something, it's so fun to me. I love cooking Italian and Mexican and, good old American way of life kind of food.
Do you have a dish that people, like, ask?
People
about from
most of the time ask me for Italian food.
Okay.
I am half Italian.
Okay.
So, and I like lighter Italian, not real heavy, but very flavorful type Italian. So a lot of times people will say, will you make me eggplant, or will you make me, seafood pasta or something like that,
So we got to have an event at your house so you can cook.
So I have quite a lot of events, and I haven't obviously over COVID I didn't have any, and I haven't recently because I've been so busy.
Yeah.
But my leadership group, the women, they're like, when are we going to be invited to dinner? And I was like, really? They're like, you go in there, and it's like going into this gourmet culinary studio.
Yeah.
I go, I only made you like beef brisket and Brussels sprouts and like crazy potatoes. And they're like, yeah, it was perfect. I don't think people cook much anymore.
I mean, I cook at home, but I think the appreciation is more, and this is obviously the relationship component, right? Like we only see people in very one-dimensional places, right? Like, oh, nope, Denise is only this one lane, right? Yeah. And then when you start talking about like your family or like your hobbies or these other things that you're interested in, you get this whole other level of people that are interested in you because you have these other skills.
Right.
And it's
Isn't that
completely unrelated to the things that you're doing, right?
And you know, I always say, I always used to say I'm not very creative. And then I realized my
You
creativity is cooking
Yeah.
and gardening and crazy things like that, that they're what I do when I want to just be left.
Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Left
No one talks to
alone.
me.
Because, well, we talk to people all day.
I know.
When I get home, I don't really, like the phone rings, I'm like, oh, really? Do I have to answer that?
Yeah. Well, you're an extroverted introvert. You're extroverted at the times you need to be, and then when you're done, you're done.
Exactly. But I do love to entertain.
Yes.
Like if people want to come to dinner, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, come to dinner.
But it's not just a regular dinner, though, it sounds like.
Well, no, sometimes it's regular old American.
Regular. We'll put that in quotes.
Home cooked food, but how fun. You know, I mean, at least for me, it's really fun.
Yeah, that does sound very good. I feel like we need to have like a cooking episode, but where we're on site cooking and having like a conversation. That would be really fun. Could have like your own Rachel Ray show, right?
I always said I wish I was Rachel Ray. So years ago,
I mean, she's local too.
Did you know Jane Golub when she was alive? I loved Jane.
Mm-mm.
Jane, obviously, Neil owned Price Chopper.
Oh, Golub. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
And we played golf together. We were in the same golf association. And I said, you know, Jane, I missed my calling. I should have been Rachel Ray. You want to be Rachel Ray? I'll make you Rachel Ray. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, we can get you going in Price Chopper. You know, we can get you started. You can cook right there in the store, and we can televise it and things like that. And I was like, wow, what a great idea. Thought about it for a while, and then I was like,
yeah, that's not me.
no, I was like, I think I like to do this quietly.
Yeah. Behind the scenes.
But how fun would that have been? That would have been like probably my other life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, you still have the opportunity. It could come at different
maybe
time.
I'll do that next round.
Yeah, exactly. Your next project. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
Such a
nice.
pleasure.
And you're such a great interviewer.
Oh, thank
you. I love that you're very low key and calm, and it just flowed so nicely.
Yes, well, I mean, that's the goal. I feel like I've practiced enough at this point, but you never know. There's off days.
That's great. And I would love to come back and tell you.
Yeah, what are you working on? Yeah, we'll hope maybe next time we do it on site.
And interview you for my second book. But that'll be next year.
That sounds good. Awesome.
But thanks again.
You're welcome.